Amazon has everything for back to school. Zebra lunchbox? Check. Cool Adidas gear like t-shirts, shoes, and backpacks? Check. Triceratops folders and pencils? Check. Laser Cat t-shirts? Check. Get your back to school shopping done now at Amazon.com/back-to-school and enjoy free shipping on millions of items. No need to leave your home or hassle with crowds. Amazon.com. No better place to get everything back to school from A to Z.
Blog Talk Radio. And welcome to Unlimited Realities. I am your host, Lisa Zimmer, and today we have a brilliant guest. We have author Philip Shepherd, author of New Self, New World. And Philip is truly a 21st century Renaissance man whose success in being an actor, director, writer, builder, designer, and corporate coach has accumulated in the genius of his book, New Self, New World. Philip, thank you so much for joining us today on Unlimited Realities.
It's just such a delight to be here. Thanks, Lisa.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to an unlimited show.
Well, it's unlimited for the next 59 minutes, so we are...
what could be better? What could be better?
We have, this is such a wonderful book. I really, really enjoyed reading it. I recommend it highly to everybody. It's such a groundbreaking book that offers so much wisdom in understanding ourselves, but it doesn't leave you there because you offer tremendous gifts in the tools and the exercises that you also provide to kind of weave in there and guide us so we can shift and evolve into our most authentic self. Let's talk a little bit about what got you to this place, because at 18 you have a fabulous story. At 18 you left Canada and you went to Europe and you got on a bicycle and you cycled solo throughout Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and you ended up in Japan. I'm sure that those cultures really flavored you and your perspective in regard to how this really planted the seed in regard to this book being birthed. So could you talk to us a little bit about what you felt and went through in your own shift, traveling through these many different countries and cultures?
Yeah, you know what? I actually, that was one reason I left, was for that shift, because I grew up in, kind of the North American suburbs, and I felt my thinking, my ideas were being funneled into these well-worn grooves, and I couldn't jump out of them by myself. I knew that they were sort of tracks laid down by my culture, with all its instructions about what constitutes normal and up, down, in, out, over, under, all that stuff. And I knew that the only way to jump the grooves was to jump the culture. So I really did deliberately set out. It's one reason I traveled by bike, because, my goodness, on a bike you're vulnerable and exposed. It's not like being inside the capsule of a car. You see someone on the road, you say hi to them. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And I traversed so many different ways of understanding what it means to be human, what a society means, what a village means, that by the time I got back to Canada, and I was away for 2 years, I suffered culture shock for the first time when I returned home, and it was extraordinary. I just had to adjust forcibly to things that I'd grown up with as given since I was a kid.
Well, how did that affect you in regard to culture shock? I mean, was it that you were looking at things in a way that you were appreciating them anew, or were you witnessing things of more of a chaotic society with askew priorities? Was it a combination of both?
It's more that there were these vast tracts of what we come to accept as reality that are just areas of our culture we can't question. And so, you look at things and you begin to ask questions in a way that, for me anyway, I just wouldn't have been able to had I not passed through so many different ways of being. And for me, the biggest question of all really had to do with how we live in our heads and how deeply, deeply supported that is. In fact, if you step back from our culture and look at it, it's this huge kind of machine for teaching us to live in our heads. That's kind of what it's turned into.
Yes.
It's language, it's institutions, it's hierarchies, it's relationships. It's such a deeply and dangerously male-inflected view of reality, and it's just a story, but it's a story that we've been developing for so many millennia. I mean, really, since for 10,000 years we've been developing this story, because 10,000 years ago was kind of a pivotal point, because we'd been, as a society, or as early European Paleolithic cultures, we'd been oriented around female values, and they had sustained us for hundreds of thousands of years. And then we discovered agriculture, and we suddenly saw the potential not for just honoring what was around us and benefiting from it and coming into harmony with it, but of actually overpowering it and implementing tools in such a way that we could control what was around us. And that was kind of the beginning of a shift towards male values that we haven't looked back from since. But it's at this point our tools are so hugely potent that the damage we wreak is incalculable. And we, we're sort of, I think we're at a precipice. We either need another major shift, or we I don't see much hope.
Well,
it's
it's one of those things where it's the value that's placed upon what our priorities are, and I've one of my biggest confusions in regard to teaching children in even kindergarten is that they stop short of teaching children that we have more than the fifth sense. We have the sixth sense, which is the intuitive feeling sense. And I think that if we could incorporate that more on a global level, we could change. We could shift the universe, because if that knowledge and that insight was implemented and a seedling at that point, God knows where we could go with that emotion and that connection with divinity. But you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree. But the big kind of impediment that you face in trying to teach kids that is that our view of the world is one that only accepts 4 dimensions, basically.
Yes.
So we learn that the world has 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time, and that's it. It's a material universe. And in my book, I talk about consciousness as the 5th dimension. It's inescapable. And and once you recognize that is a dimension of your world, and you adjust to that reality, then all those other things are sort of natural consequences of that recognition. So the big question for me is how to bring our story about reality, or our view of reality, into line with what actually is. So it's not wish fulfillment. It's just, if you begin to ask questions, if you look at the findings of quantum mechanics and you see at this subtle level, mind and matter can't be separated out. They're 2 aspects of one thing. They're so intimately related, and I think we're so attached to the status quo that leaves us in this fantasy land of the American dream, that it's really hard to wake up from that.
Right. And you also have, that brings us into the first, area of discussion here. You talk about the known self, and you have 9 actual spheres of the known self, and that's kind of what we're talking about right now is the story and the perspective of what we hold and what we carry within ourselves. Can we talk a little bit or touch a little bit briefly on what those 9 spheres encompass within ourselves?
Absolutely. Now, the essence of understanding the spheres is one that says, our idea that intelligence is the capacity to reason, and that's what intelligence is. It's our ability to manipulate abstract symbols, is such a destructively narrow view of our intelligence. I basically, in the book, I say, intelligence is sensitivity. And you can have a sensitivity to melody, you can have a sensitivity to a child's tears, you can have a sensitivity to arithmetic relationship, you can have a sensitivity to rocket science, but they're all sensitivities. And once you recognize that intelligence is no other than sensitivity, then you begin to look at how we actually shut our intelligence down by diminishing our sensitivity. So those spheres that kind of map out our sensitivity in a way begin at a level where you are thinking about your own thoughts, basically oblivious to the world. So it's like a closed system. And then that system sort of opens, like you're aware of the world, but it's as though you're looking at it through a window. And then you become aware of the body, but it's like a machine, right, that you're separate from. You live in the head, and you kind of get feedback from the machine. And then you move into the emotions, and you're aware of the emotions, but it's like they're invasive forces that are somehow other than your core identity. And we move through these spheres in the course of the day. The sphere of the emotional body, it's a sphere that in which we feel our emotions more acutely than we can feel the present. And I think a lot of fundamentalism in all its many, many guises is one in which people have these emotional reactions, and the present is clouded, and so instead of the ability to feel what is, they feel their emotions, and their emotions instruct them about what is, and it goes unquestioned because they're not yet able to integrate those emotions, and then the as your sensitivity begins to dilate, you begin to feel the body not as an alien machine that you're trapped in, but you begin to feel it as energy. And then the world, instead of seeing it as mere material objects that are all independent from one another, you begin to feel the world itself as energy. And then as your heart opens to that energy, you begin to come into harmony with it, which is a very special thing. And it goes back to, our word consciousness. The little beginning of that word, the C-O-N, means with. And I puzzled about that, and I looked it up. And our word consciousness comes from a Latin root that means to be mutually aware. And so in the root of our word, we find the towering truth that it's only through the world that you become aware of yourself. If you take the world away, if you put someone in an isolation chamber, they go nuts. They can't sustain their own sanity. So it's hand in hand with the world that we develop. And then the spheres even move beyond that to a recognition. Once you feel the world as a whole, and your sensitivity enables you to cohere all the sensations into a felt whole, you actually feel it as a vow in whatever way it might manifest, whether it's just